Normally, I just do these installments, day at a time. Today, I'm going to do at least two, maybe three. So same shirt, same background, everything. We've had we've been. You notice the background is different, and that's because we're at our youngest daughter's house here in Las Vegas, and have been here with the kids. Our middle daughter and her family from Idaho drove down. She works offsite for the Smith Center for the Performing Arts here in Vegas, and the timing was right for her to uh, come down, drive down for to be on site. So anyway, it was a great time for at least the 2/3 of our family to get together, and of course we did it over the Fourth of July holiday weekend. And you think about Vegas on the 4th of July, and whatever you're thinking is probably right. It's hot. Uh, but our trip became much more complicated as we were leaving, literally in line to get on the plane in Oklahoma City. My wife, Debbie, got a call from her nephew saying that her oldest brother had passed in California. So funeral arrangements were made, and his service will be Friday. Of course, one blessing is we're much closer here in Las Vegas to Salinas, California, than if we were in Oklahoma City. So we'll be flying up there to San Jose, and then the Friday memorial service. While we have been here Sunday, when we were in church, my youngest daughter called to tell us that my sister had died that morning, which we knew was imminent. And I mean, there's some ways we rejoice because she was a devoted follower of Jesus, and her suffering, actually, she had some discomfort, but not a lot, and it was brief. So there's many good things, if I can say it that way, many things for me to be thankful for in that, and yet there is the grief of our loss. So then add to that just the complication of travel. We truly were not prepared for either of these events, and just some practical ways, like I brought flip-flops and shorts and t-shirts. So anyway, that if I'm not sure what the days are going to hold, what kind of opportunities, what kind of situation I'm going to have to sit down and post up. If I have those, I'm going to do it. But if not, then if they don't show up, and either they come into your inbox or you get queued up about them. If that doesn't happen, that's the explanation. And so, of course, I really appreciate your prayers. Comfort always, and just God's travel mercies. There's so many moving parts on this thing. Anyway, that's the explanation. And so today, I want to talk about the next phrase that David uses in Psalm 15 to describe this person who can live in intimacy with God, in intimate fellowship, walking with Him, this close relationship. We've talked about it. Starts in verse 2, this profile: whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their heart, whose tongue utters no slander, who does no wrong to a neighbor. We talked about those things, and today we pick it up with, and cast no slur on others. This, to me, I know there's a junior high boy still living in my head. Casting a slur. I just think of a slur, casting a slur. Okay, what is casting a slur? In high school, junior high and actually in grade school, junior high and high school, I was in the band, and except for my last 2 years, I played the trombone. And a slur on a trombone is a well, that's not what we're talking about. What is a slur? Well, a slur is a statement that implies something negative without actually stating it. It's kind of, you've had this happen to you. Somebody has said something derogatory or negative without saying something derogatory or negative. I mean, it's an implication, and if you call them on it, usually their response is, oh, well, if that's how you want to take it, or, oh, that's not what I meant. A slur, well, what's the idea behind a slur? The idea behind a slur is it's a very passive-aggressive thing to do. It's not like the slap in the face. No, that's not a slur. It's like with your just kind of the boink from the side or from the back, or it's a you see what I'm talking about. Ooh, in the whole relational world, it happens a lot. And some people have grown up in families where that was their main way of relating with these under the radar smacks that aren't smacks. They're the subtle implications of somebody's weakness or failure or something negative. I see in my counseling, I just see this is one of the things that happens almost on a constant basis with the conflicted couples that I work with. And they don't even, most of the time, it's safe for me to say, they don't even realize they're doing it. It's become such a habit that they cast slurs back and forth. These are like a cold cut would be a slur, you know. And one of the things about a well-crafted slur is that as the slurrer, the slurree has a hard time turning it back on me, right? I mean, I can excuse myself out of it or explain myself out of it, or I can actually say, well, you know, what's true is true. If the shoe fits, that's a horrible way to relate to one another. This false positive and false negative, and this whole passive aggressive, to your face I'll smile and to your back I'll spit. That's a horrible way for a relationship to go, and more than that, that's a horrible way for anybody to live. I mentioned to you that some families have this so deeply ingrained that it's their primary way of relating to one another. And one of the outcomes of this is adults who don't know how to overcome, how to change that very broken lifestyle. And part of my job is to help them, first of all, have to notice it. And secondly, they have to exert self-control. And I'm thoroughly convinced it's not just a matter of their own self-control, but it's their self-control in partnership with the grace of Christ at work in them to replace this passive-aggressive behavior with sincerity and honesty. I mean, that really everything about the profile up to this point has been about a sincere heart, someone who is honest. My phrase for this is WYSIWYG. You have to be an old person to remember back in the day before Windows and when Apple was just a geek's thing. The rest of us were on DOS computers. And then you would type, I used WordPerfect, and I remember typing up documents in WordPerfect, not knowing what they were going to look like because the line breaks in the presentation on the page would never be what it was on my screen, right? You'd print it out, and that's where you would see. And then Windows came on the scene, and it was WYSIWYG, which means what you see is what you get. You saw on the screen how it would look on your page. Oh, for a guy like me that back in the day when I was in youth ministry and then family ministry, graphics, I had to use graphics because people needed those to get engaged. And boy, was that was a big boom. Well, I most admire WYSIWYG people. What you see is what you get. I have I'd call it a concern. Really what it amounts to is I'm afraid I have a low regard for people who are one way in one setting and another way in another setting. Now, what I don't mean is that they don't approach each setting in the way that it calls for. I'm just saying some people, like for instance, there's some preachers, and when I hear them preach, I think, golly, is that how you talk to your wife? My ordained spouse, it is time for us to seat ourselves around the table, and you would serve us our daily sustenance. No, that's not how it works, right? Okay, so what I'm saying is, for me, if I call you a WYSIWYG person, that's about as high a compliment as I know how to give. What you see is what you get. Now, here's the thing. If we want to weed out this tendency to cast a slur, to get stuck in this passive-aggressive mode, we have to recognize it. We have to call it out. We have to discipline ourselves to do something else, because you can't just quit casting a slur. You replace that behavior with something else. What would be the behavior? It would be, Paul writes it this way. He talks about people growing in their maturity, and he says this is one of the marks. They speak the truth in love. His actual words are, speaking the truth in love, we will in all things grow up into him who is the head. Okay, well, when you speak the truth in love, you don't cast slurs. I'm not even sure that it's possible to cast a slur while speaking the truth in love. So the question for all of us as we look at this whole profile is, does that describe me? Sometimes. And nobody's perfect at living up to that. And then that's not even the assignment. But by God's grace, am I growing to live up to this profile? Well, that's it for this time. I'll start again next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.